This podcast is brought to you by the IIEA, sharing ideas, shaping policy.
Good afternoon. I'm Alex White, Director General here at the Institute. You're very welcome this afternoon to this IIEA webinar. And we're really very pleased to be joined this afternoon by Professor Avi Shlaim, one of the most distinguished scholars on the Middle East, and in particular on Palestine and Israel. The occasion for our conversation this afternoon is the publication of Professor Shlaim's most recent book, entitled Genocide in Gaza, Israel's Long War on Palestine, a series of essays ranging across the long history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict right up to the present day. And at the heart of the book, as its title makes clear, is the author's analysis and justification for his conclusion that the actions of the Israeli government in Gaza constitute genocide. The work has been recognized as a Times Literary Supplement Book of the Year 2024. In terms of its availability, I know it's available in good bookshops here in Dublin because I picked up my own copy in books upstairs just a couple of weeks ago. But there will also be an opportunity, and we're going to post it on the chat now shortly, an opportunity for you to order the book online from its publisher. And of note, the publisher is an Irish publisher, and I think Avi has described the book as his Irish book because it is published by Belfast-based publishers Irish Pages Press. And as I said, there'll be a link at some point in the chat for you if you're interested in buying the book directly online from the publishers. So we'll get matters underway. Professor Shlaim will speak for a little while himself at the outset, maybe 20 minutes or so, addressing some of the main themes of his book. It doesn't have to be 20 minutes. It can be shorter or maybe not much longer, but it can be shorter. I'll leave that to you, Avi. But we usually go sort of in or around 20 minutes. Addressing some of the main themes, as I say, that he covers in the book, and perhaps touching on the current situation as he sees it. Afterwards, then we go to you, the audience, for a Q&A. You can pop in a question into the Q&A function on Zoom. Feel free, as we always say, to send in a question throughout the session, like as the question occurs to you. You don't have to wait until the end of Avi's introductory remarks to put the question in. Sometimes we find in these webinars, people wait and, I don't know, see will other people ask the same question they have in mind, or they just wait for other reasons. But once you have the question in mind, pop it in and we'll get to it. A reminder that today's presentation and the Q&A are both on the record. Avi Shlaim is Emeritus Professor of International Relations at the University of Oxford and a Fellow at St. Antony's College. He is a globally renowned historian of the modern Middle East. He was elected Fellow of the British Academy in 2006, was awarded a British Academy Medal for Lifetime Achievement in 2017. An Arab Jew, Avi Shlaim was born in Baghdad in 1945, grew up in Israel, served in the Israeli Defense Forces, and received his university education at Cambridge and at the London School of Economics. He's based at the Middle East Centre at St. Antony's in Oxford, where his main research interest continues to be the Arab-Israeli conflict, most recently, the genocide in Gaza. Welcome, Avi, and you have the floor.
Thank you very much indeed. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to introduce my Irish book to your very distinguished Irish audience. I call it my Irish book because, as you already pointed out, it is published by Irish Pages Press. And my publisher, who is on this call, is Chris A.G., who is also the editor of the literary journal Irish Pages, which is when I first got to know him, and we have become friends. And Chris would like those members of your institute who would like to buy the book to buy directly from their website rather than through any other means. The other reason that I call this my Irish book is that there is an afterword, a coda by the very distinguished Irish barrister, Blinne Ní Ghrálaigh. And Blinne as you all know, was a member of the South African delegation to the International Court of Justice, and she made a presentation that went viral. And Blinne very kindly allowed us to print the text of her address to the ICJ as a coda to this book. And Blinne makes the case for regarding what Israel is doing in Gaza as genocide much more eloquently than I can. She points out that the Convention for the Prevention and Punishment of Genocide is about more than legal precedent. It is fundamentally about morality. Genocide is the denial of the right to exist of entire human groups, as homicide is the denial of the right to live of individual human beings. Blinne also suggested that more is at stake than the future of Gaza. At stake is the future, the very reputation of international law hangs in the balance. The ICJ heeded Blinne's call for provisional measures and ordered Israel to take provisional measures to prevent the risk of genocide in Gaza. Israel, as is its wont, totally ignored the call for provisional measures. The two best parts of this collection of essays is the foreword and the coda, the foreword and the afterword. And the foreword is written by Francesca Albanese, the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in the Occupied Territories, and a leading and courageous champion of human rights and of justice for all. In her foreword, Francesca writes that genocide is the epilogue of a tragedy foretold. I did not foretell or forecast or expect the genocide to take place in Gaza, but she did. Why did she expect it to take place? Because the Zionist movement and the state of Israel, Israel is a settler colonial state. And the logic of settler colonialism is the elimination of the natives. An initial aim of Israel in the attack on Gaza was the ethnic cleansing, the depopulation of the Strip. So far, because of Egyptian resistance, this hasn't happened. But in the meantime, Israel has gone a step further than ethnic cleansing, and it has gone towards genocide. Ethnic cleansing hasn't worked in Gaza, although it's proceeding apace on the West Bank. So Israel has started killing the people in Gaza. You may say that genocide is the ethnic is the frustrated. Genocide is the last resort of the frustrated ethnic cleanser. Francesca points out that what matters under international law is that specific criminal acts are committed with the intent of destroying the group as a whole. I hesitated before agreeing to use the word genocide in the title of this collection of essays. Genocide is a big word, and applying it to Jews, who are the main victims of the Nazi genocide, seemed particularly perverse. A couple of years ago, I published a book under the title Three Worlds, Memoirs of an Arab Jew. And there I wrote that for all its sins, Israel has not been guilty of genocide. But the facts have changed, and therefore I've changed my opinions in line with the changing facts. So now I have no hesitation in saying that Israel is guilty of genocide in Gaza. Let me begin with the definition of genocide in the Convention for the Prevention and Punishment of Genocide. It's not an exact quote, but what it says is that genocide is the intent to destroy a racial or ethnic or religious group in whole or in part. So it's the intent to destroy a group. And there are 5 criteria of actions that amount to genocide, and Israel meets at least 4 and possibly all 5 of these criteria, and therefore it is a genocidal state. The fundamental point that I want to emphasize is that the Zionist movement and Israel have not acknowledged that the Palestinians have national rights, with a few exceptions. But fundamentally, it rejects that the Palestinians have any national rights in Palestine. In a chapter on Benjamin Netanyahu, which I wrote especially for this collection, I describe his career and his worldview, and I show that his life's mission has been to prevent the birth, to prevent the establishment of a Palestinian state. And the clinching piece of evidence that this is the aim, to prevent the birth of a Palestinian state, is the policy guidelines of the coalition government he presented to the Knesset in 2022 after winning the election. And these policy guidelines say that, quote, Jews have an exclusive right to self-determination in the whole land of Israel. Now, the land of Israel includes the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, as right-wing Israelis like to call it. So here is an official claim that Jews have an exclusive right to self-determination in the whole land of Israel, which means that Palestinians have no right to self-determination in any part of this area. I have also in this book used the term politicide to describe Israel's aim in the conflict with the Palestinians. The term politicide you will not find in a dictionary. It was coined by the late Israeli sociologist Baruch Kimmerling. What it means is that Israel is determined to prevent any independent Palestinian political existence in Palestine. So it's the destruction of a polity, or rather preventing a Palestinian polity, an independent Palestinian polity from ever emerging. A great deal of the book is a history of the conflict between Israel and Hamas. The emphasis on history is because we can't really understand what is going on in the Middle East today without understanding the history. And here I'll only single out a few major landmarks. One is 2005, when Israel withdrew unilaterally from Gaza. Israel presented this as a contribution to peace, but it was nothing of the sort. Israeli spokesman said that they were, by withdrawing from Gaza, they were giving the people of Gaza an opportunity to turn the enclave into the Singapore of the Middle East. Their chutzpah knows no bounds. In reality, the withdrawal from Gaza happened under pressure from Hamas, and it was undertaken not as a contribution to peace, but as what was seen as Israeli national interest. And withdrawal from Gaza was not followed by further withdrawals from the West Bank, but on the contrary, the consolidation of the Israeli presence of the West Bank and the expansion of settlements. In January 2006, Hamas won a fair and free election in not just in Gaza, but on the West Bank as well. And it proceeded to form a moderate government which offered Israel negotiations on a long-term ceasefire. Israel refused to recognize this government. It refused to negotiate, and it resorted to economic warfare to undermine this government. The United States and European Union, which at that time included Britain, joined Israel in refusing to recognize this democratically elected government and in taking measures to undermine it. As the Palestine papers reveal, there was a plot which included Israel, Fatah, America, and Egyptian intelligence to isolate, weaken, and eventually undermine, drive Hamas out of power. There was a plan for a Fatah coup d'etat against Hamas. Hamas preempted it by seizing power in Gaza, and since 2007, the Gaza Strip has been governed by Hamas and the West Bank by the political authority in Ramallah. Following the seizure of power in Gaza, Israel imposed a blockade on the Strip, and a blockade is a form of collective punishment which is prescribed by international law. In 2008, Egypt brokered a ceasefire between Israel and Israel and Hamas. The ceasefire worked well until Israel violated it. In parentheses, I would add that to the best of my knowledge, every single ceasefire between Israel and Hamas was violated by Israel, not by Hamas. Israel violated the ceasefire and launched Operation Cast Lead in December 2008, which was the first Israeli military offensive in Gaza after the withdrawal. One chapter in the book is a paper that I wrote for the International Criminal Court about war crimes in Gaza, in which I describe the successive Israeli military offensives and the mindset that lies behind them. The periodic assaults on Gaza, not just on Hamas, but on the people of Gaza. And these assaults are described by Israeli generals as mowing the lawn, a chilling metaphor. It means something mechanical you do periodically and without end. And under this rubric, the next war is always round the corner. The Hamas-led attack on the 7th of October was a horrific attack, and it was roundly denounced, and I denounce it. But it unleashed the longest, deadliest, and most ruinous war in the history of the Arab-Israeli conflict. Israel and its friends claim that it has the right to defend itself, but under international law, you only have that right if there is a UN Security Council resolution authorizing it, or if you are attacked by another state. Israel was attacked by Hamas, and you don't have the right to defend yourself against the people whom you occupy. It's the people under occupation who have the right to resist, including armed resistance. The Western media has tended to report the Israeli narrative of this conflict and not to report the Palestinian right, and to ignore altogether the Hamas narrative. I'm one of the group of experts who have helped a London firm of solicitors to compile a petition to the Home Secretary to de-proscribe Hamas. And the supporting evidence is about 500 pages, and it consists largely with history, and it gives the Hamas version, the Hamas narrative of what happened on the 7th of October, and it briefly says the following. Specific orders were given to the Hamas combatants to attack specific military targets. Then things got out of hand and atrocities were committed. Hamas is willing to have the ICC or any independent international body investigate what happened. This is in sharp contrast with Israel, which doesn't allow any independent investigation of the behavior of the IDF, and it doesn't allow any journalists to go into Gaza. How much longer have I got, Alex?
Sorry, another 5 minutes or so would be fine, Avi, but you know, we're flexible.
Mm-hmm.
And we do have some questions in, so sometimes it's you know, it's just as easy to filter your thoughts through the questions as otherwise, but please feel free to take another few minutes.
Thank you very much. The Hamas attack on Israel unhinged the whole of Israeli society, and the Israeli response to that attack has been savage and barbaric, as well as unlawful. It's been a revenge against the attack, and revenge is not a policy. Statistics tell part of the story. The IDF has killed over 56,000 people in Gaza, more than 70% of whom are women and children. The IDF has destroyed 70% of the housing and civil infrastructure in Gaza. The IDF has forced the displacement of 90% of about 2 million out of 2.3 million people in Gaza. Sometimes it forced them to move more than 10 times, and very frequently when the people obeyed the IDF order to move, they were bombed and shelled. And the forcible displacement of civilians is a war crime. The use of starvation as a war weapon, as a weapon of war, is a war crime. And Israel has been committing these war crimes on a daily basis for the last 25 years. So it's for the last 20 months. So in this war, Israel has been guilty of many crimes. Domicide, the destruction of houses, of domiciles. Ecocide, the destruction of the economy. econocide, the destruction of the economy. Scholasticide, which is the systematic destruction of the educational system, a subject which is of particular interest to me, and I've written an article in the Journal of the British Academy on scholasticide in Gaza, but also Israel has been guilty of the crime of crimes, genocide. And maybe I'll stop here.
This podcast is brought to you by the IIEA, sharing ideas, shaping policy.